We are tracking a massive development out of Donetsk. Ukraine reports a single FPV drone costing just a few $100 just swatted a $16 million Russian Ka-52 attack chopper out of the sky. If command confirms this kinetic strike, we aren't just looking at standard battlefield attrition. It is the exact flashpoint forcing us to completely rethink the brutal reality of modern combat. Because the second a cheap commercial UAV can actively hunt Russia's deadliest airborne platforms, the entire calculus of battlefield survival, armor, and combat power violently flips upside down. That is why this intel matters way beyond a single downed bird. Across the zero line, intense pressure is already crushing Russian armor. Logistics routes, trench bunkers, and heavy artillery nests. Forward recon assets are getting obliterated with terrifying speed. These aren't random skirmishes anymore. We are watching a coordinated kill chain where unmanned aerial vehicles are no longer just spotting targets. They are the very fist of Ukraine's offensive operations. The real operational question isn't just Russian casualty numbers. It is how violently the whole theater of war is shifting, and the lethal price for failing to adapt. Stay locked here with military force. This tactical report of a Ukrainian FPV drone annihilating a Russian Ka-52 in Donetsk proves unmanned warfare just entered a brutally escalating, highly lethal new phase. The gunship took a direct hit March 20th, with combat footage hitting open-source channels shortly after. The Kyiv Independent flagged that frontline reports lacked independent verification at the time of the strike, which is a critical detail. The fog of war is thick, and information operations run hot. Still, this specific kill stands out. We aren't talking about a supply truck or a static trench, but Russia's premier attack helicopter. That alone upgrades this from a routine drone strike to a massive strategic event. And when you escalate the target profile, the entire battlefield dynamic violently shifts. The most jarring intel here is the extreme financial mismatch. A Ka-52 bleeds about $16 million, whereas these frontline FPVs cost pennies, maybe a few $100, or in heavily armed configurations, hovering around $1,000. Now, that doesn't mean every plastic drone automatically drops a fighter jet, but it violently proves that traditional military supremacy is fracturing. Throwing money at heavy armor absolutely no longer guarantees your survival. A military can dump billions into state-of-the-art airframes, only to get shredded by a cheap, localized drone deployed with ruthless precision at the perfect tactical moment. That is the pivot. This isn't just viral combat footage anymore. It is a blaring strategic siren. The sheer rarity of this exact kill gives it massive tactical weight. The Kyiv Independent confirmed this is the second downed gunship credited to this specific assault brigade. Meanwhile, military analysts and defense intelligence networks flagged this as an exceptionally rare, high-value kinetic strike. That is critical intelligence. Anomalies in combat often expose bleeding new vulnerabilities in enemy defenses. We already knew FPVs terrorized infantry squads, supply convoys, heavy armor, and fortified trench networks. But if these kamikaze units are actively hunting rotary wing aviation near the zero line, then the rigid barrier separating ground targets from aerial superiority is completely disintegrating. With that barrier erased, flight crews must brutally recalculate safe standoff distances. Let's review another critical factor together: fiber optic control. Field reports indicate the killer drone utilized a hardwired fiber optic spool, rendering it practically immune to the electronic jamming that plagues standard radio-linked FPVs. This is huge. Electronic warfare has been Russia's primary shield against Ukrainian drone swarms. A jam-proof platform completely resets the battlefield geometry once again, especially in brutal sectors like Pokrovsk, where Reuters tracks Ukrainian brass leaning hard into unmanned strike groups, and Kyiv plans to acquire 4.5 million drones by 2025. Listen, this isn't a single lucky punch. It signals a massive operational push to deploy cheap, surgical, adaptable munitions across the entire front line. That aggressive scaling is exactly why this Ka-52 takedown is more than just sensational news. The tactical takeaway is grim and clear. Modern combat isn't dictated by the force flashing the most expensive hardware anymore, but by whoever fields vast swarms of hyper-accurate platforms, mutates tactics faster, and strikes the absolute second enemy armor exposes a flaw. A heavy gunship is devastating, but its survival still relies entirely on timing, exposure, and pilot skill. What you and I are watching is cheap drones violently shifting that combat balance. Listen up. If Ka-52 gunships are taking heat in these conditions, imagine the brutal kinetic pressure coming down on slower, completely exposed ground targets right now. Looking at the Lyman sector, the critical shift isn't just that Russian units are taking heavier casualties. It's that literally any movement in this grid now equals an immediate death sentence. Fresh sitemap and Ukrainian combat feeds show FPV drones shredding UAZ vehicles, troop carriers, and supply bikes. They are also wiping out isolated infantry elements. Back in January, Ukrinform confirmed Signum operators obliterated a transport moving Russian troops through the Lyman vector. By February, Intel confirmed thermal-equipped night drones actively shattered another Russian mechanized push in that zone. We are tracking a solid tactical pattern, not just isolated combat highlights. And you and I know, once a pattern locks in, the entire battle space transforms entirely. The escalating nightmare for Russian command is that these drone operators aren't just waiting around for massive armored columns anymore. They are actively hunting the micro-logistics that keep the front line breathing. In the Lyman AO, that means striking light transports, scattered infantrymen, and guys attempting stealth movement through shattered tree lines or cratered terrain. Multiple frontline sitreps and unit feeds show Russian soldiers getting tracked from above, scrambling through forests, or desperately diving for cover after exposure. This radically changes the meaning of tactical movement in itself, because a short infantry dash between trenches is now the exact second a hostile target gets locked and fixed. When movement equals lethal exposure, your survival is measured in milliseconds. The most brutal development here is that drones aren't just vaporizing physical assets. They are totally erasing any psychological sense of safety. An approach vector to the zero line isn't a road anymore. It is a designated kill box. A bombed-out structure offers absolutely zero reliable cover. A fortified trench, a hasty dugout, or a dense tree line might block direct ground fire, but they offer zero guarantee against lethal optical feeds watching from the sky above. This is exactly why the Lyman sector matters far beyond the daily kill counts. The tactical significance here is the brutal, unforgiving rule asserting itself on the ground. If a unit moves, it gets painted. If it gets painted, it gets tracked. And if it gets tracked, high explosive ordnance is inbound immediately. That relentless kill chain turns isolated strikes into a suffocating system of absolute battlefield dominance. Night ops with thermal drones escalate this tension, proving the cover of darkness no longer shields advancing forces. Recent intelligence on night strikes around Lyman confirms Ukrainian strike teams are leveraging this capability, not just to eliminate targets, but to completely shatter the operational timing of Russian assault formations. Once that operational tempo is broken, even a massive battalion loses its cohesion and crumbles. The most devastating fallout isn't just dropping a few vehicles or a squad in a single blast. It is the systemic paralysis inflicted on the entire logistics network behind them. When courier bikes, utility vans, or advance infantry units get intercepted early, the rear echelons start bleeding. Ammo drops are delayed. Critical radio batteries never reach the front. Medevac operations become impossible. Officers completely lose faith in supply routes that were designated safe hours ago. You and I need to see Lyman as way more than just a violent map sector. It acts as a glaring warning of how drone saturation fractures enemy logistics from the zero line backwards. And the moment that rear echelon collapses, the entire front line is exposed to a massive catastrophic failure. Russian supply lines are their critical vulnerability, because every single resupply run is now a suicide mission. In this combat zone, a cargo truck isn't just a truck, and a dirt bike isn't just a bike. They are high-value targets hauling ammo, rations, fuel, comms, batteries, armor parts, or fresh meat to trenches that are already collapsing. When we neutralize one of those assets, the damage goes way beyond scorched metal and burned cargo. It severs the logistical artery, keeping that entire combat sector alive. Tactical reports from 2025 proved that drone-saturated kill zones were already choking out Russian rear movements. Defense analysts confirm these swarms are the main reason hostile assaults are failing to organize and hold ground. This is vital, because pure logistics is what translates combat power into actual kinetic pressure up front. And the second that pipeline bleeds out, the assault tempo completely crashes. The tactical logic here is simple, but absolutely brutal. If logistical convoys get annihilated before reaching the line, listen up. Our latest intel shows frontline infantry bleeding dry of shells, rations, batteries, and repair kits. The tactical translation? Zero chance to rotate battered squads, medevac the wounded, or keep comms, drones, and optics alive under brutal fire. Field reports from late 2024 proved that pushing logistics anywhere near the zero line became a total suicide mission under 1F, heavy artillery and drone overwatch, forcing commanders to rely on unmanned ground robots just to deliver ammo. This grim reality explains why we track even the smallest Russian transport assets as high-value targets today. One precision strike shatters their logistics, leaves an assault squad pinned down, and bleeds the combat power they need for their next offensive. The true tactical damage isn't just the burning wreck on the drone feed, it's the ammo that never arrives. That's exactly why Russian command is scrambling, shifting to dirt bikes, quads, and other ultralight transports. These rigs are cheap, incredibly fast, and way more agile than heavy trucks crossing cratered terrain. Fresh field dispatches confirm they are running these light rigs for desperate frontal assaults and punching supplies straight to the contact line. But this desperate tactical shift carries a brutal, deadly cost. A dirt bike flies across the mud, but offers absolutely zero armor once our optics lock on. To put it bluntly, Moscow is downgrading to light logistics because heavy armor simply cannot survive. But these unarmored rigs are perfect prey for FPV strike drones. That fatal contradiction is currently driving the entire tempo of this war. Operating under the cover of darkness used to offer a shield. Today, that advantage is totally gone. Intel from early 2026 showed Ukrainian forces deploying heavy night FPV drones to crush Russian convoys on the Lyman front. Darkness doesn't hide anyone anymore. This is massive, because Nightfall once cloaked crucial ammo drops, troop rotations, and armored pushes toward the zero line. Now, advanced thermals and high-res optics catch hot engines, body heat, and every single footstep through the thickest tree lines or ruined terrain. Fresh technical dispatches also confirm how thermal optics are now standard issue for Ukrainian robotic and drone strike packages after Nightfall. So, the night is no longer a safe operational curtain. It's just a thermal hunting ground. This brutal shift puts massive, agonizing stress on the logistical rear. With Russia stripped of distance, physical cover, and darkness to protect their logistics, Kyiv has the ultimate opening to push UAV warfare to a terrifying new level. Stick with me here. The mission isn't just reacting to enemy assaults after they launch anymore. It's an aggressive posture endlessly searching, painting targets, and violently severing the supply chains that make those Russian offensives possible in the first place. When that kinetic pressure never stops, the battlefield stops punishing isolated tactical errors and starts systematically dismantling the entire military machine. Ukraine's drone strategy has completely evolved. They aren't sitting around waiting for a convoy to magically appear. We are watching a relentless, continuous hunt. The core objective is to choke Russian forces with non-stop psychological and kinetic pressure, minute by minute, hour by hour. This means attack drones can physically lay an ambush, lock onto a fleeing transport, stalk Russian infantry through dense tree lines, and strike the exact second those troops think they are safe. This is a massive tactical shift. The front line is no longer cleanly sliced into safe rear areas and hot combat zones. A quiet supply road, a dense tree line, or a blown-out bunker instantly becomes part of the exact same deadly kill chain the second an optic spots it. The outcome isn't just a higher volume of strikes. It's a suffocating new psychological terror. Survival has absolutely nothing to do with grid coordinates anymore, and everything to do with whether a drone has already marked you. And when sheer visibility triggers immediate kinetic action, the high-value target list naturally explodes in scope. This expanded kill list is our strongest indicator that Ukraine is systematically trying to shatter far more than just Russian infantry movement. Raw combat footage and frontline dispatches show drones obliterating troops and armor, sure, but they are also hunting temporary shelters, fortified dugouts, comms towers, and deeply camouflaged command positions designed to keep their entire defensive network alive. Back in late 2025, Ukrainian border guard units declassified footage of direct hits on Russian bunkers and comms relays, confirming this brutal new tactical doctrine. The objective here isn't just to blow up random hardware. It's a calculated move to cripple the enemy's capacity to hide, communicate, regroup, and stay online during combat. The moment comms towers go dark and bunkers feel like death traps, even reserves sitting safely off the contact line start panicking, totally losing faith in their defense. We know the drill. When morale collapses, heavy artillery and surveillance become the next lethal layer. Now, Russian artillery batteries face extreme heat because throwing up basic camouflage just isn't enough to survive anymore. Listen up. An artillery crew can dig in, throw camouflage over their guns, or hunker down in a bunker that used to look totally secure from ground observation. But our latest intel shows recon drones still spot them. Once that grid is painted, lethal FPV strikes or heavy counter-battery fire immediately follow. That turns heavy artillery into a highly fragile tactical asset, especially if they keep pounding targets from the exact same firing position. The deeper tactical problem here? Artillery depends on live battlefield data just like artillery shells. If hostiles spot the weapon, track the crew's movements, or map their firing pattern, even a heavily fortified battery gets smashed to pieces. This is exactly why combat operations are moving beyond pure firepower, shifting right into a brutal war for total battlefield awareness. Let's review the sitrep. Russian reconnaissance drones are now massive, high-value targets themselves. Enemy systems like Orlan, Zala, and Supercam aren't merely flying cameras. They form a critical kill chain network that feeds Russian artillery coordinates and guides infantry assaults. It lets their field commanders strike fast. We are seeing Ukrainian forces relentlessly hunt these drones mid-air. Recent tactical reports from 2025 and 2026 confirm massive interception rates for those platforms. This means way more than just another aerial kill, because once you blind the enemy, Russian artillery drops rounds blindly, ground squads lose cohesion, and enemy commanders operate completely in the dark. Bottom line here. Ukrainian forces aren't just blowing up Russian armor, they are actively destroying Russian optics. Once their operational vision degrades, enemy command and control completely collapses. This proves combat UAVs are now strategic tools for system erosion, not just kinetic strikes. Sure, they can vaporize a supply truck, but they also blind recon elements, jam comms networks, expose hidden gun lines, and obliterate any safe shelter. Under this tactical model, the drone stops being just a cheap missile flying at a bunker. It evolves into a highly lethal, integrated method for systematically tearing down the enemy's command, control, surveillance, and comms network, piece by bloody piece. This is exactly why this current operational phase is critical. We are tracking a battlefield shaped not by who shoots the farthest artillery, but by who locks the enemy under relentless observation and absolutely crushing kinetic pressure. Once that brutal tactical logic sets in, drone combat doesn't just hit the dirt, it immediately builds an impenetrable defensive perimeter right behind the main line of contact. Unmanned warfare isn't some secondary support tool for Ukrainian infantry anymore. It is the primary vanguard strike layer up front, and a massive defensive shield in the rear. That is why modern combat operations are entirely drone-centric today. On the zero line, FPVs are dictating movement, executing armor, and pinning down infantry squads before their assaults even start. Back at the rear echelon, interceptor UAVs are running a new mission profile, actively neutralizing incoming Shahed threats before they hit critical infrastructure. Sitreps from 2025 and 2026 show these interceptor squadrons wiping out a massive percentage of incoming hostiles. We are talking 90% kill rates. This changes everything. Combat drones aren't just offensive strike weapons. They are actively forming a heavy, wide-area defensive kinetic shield. You and I are seeing UAVs dictate both attack and defense vectors, and it is fundamentally altering the DNA of modern combat. The tactical impact here goes way beyond raw kill counts. If the front line is eating non-stop FPV fragmentation, while the rear sector gets locked down by interceptor drones, then Ukrainian command has pushed drone warfare across the entire combat zone. It forms one unified kill web. One drone element locks down approach routes and annihilates frontline squads. A second element tracks enemy convoys, ripping apart supply logistics before assaults formulate. And a third operational layer defends major cities, infrastructure, and rear command posts against long-range strikes. This intel is critical because modern warfare is won in depth, not just inside a single muddy trench. When Allied forces flood that battle space depth with cheap, highly scalable attack drones, the combat zone becomes absolute hell to survive. Stick with me. This is why the earlier intel finally aligns. Heavy Ka-52 gunships get shredded mid-air. Armored columns and infantry squads get brutally hunted on the dirt. Supply lines get absolutely obliterated long before they hit the zero line. Nightfall offers zero safety. Camouflaged artillery batteries get painted and destroyed instantly. Enemy recon drones get swatted down to permanently crush fire control and tactical awareness. Rear areas locked down by interceptor drones. We aren't looking at isolated incidents anymore. This is one unified kill web. Drones are now commanding the center of the battle space. The strategic fallout is absolutely brutal. Fail to adapt to these heavy drone swarms, rapid target locks, and relentless pounding from front line to rear, you lose a hell of a lot more than armor. You bleed momentum, unit cohesion, and total grip on the battlefield. Listen to me. These aren't just flashy combat clips online. You and I are watching a violent rewrite of modern military doctrine. Look at the latest intel, a heavy Ka-52 gunship reportedly swatted out of the sky by a cheap FPV. Add the daily slaughter of supply trucks, infantry squads, gun pits, and bunkers. Even enemy scout birds are getting shredded. This is a massive tactical shift. Ukrainian forces aren't just treating unmanned aircraft as side support anymore. They've made them the main battery of a lethal network, built to strip apart enemy combat power, layer by bloody layer. Every troop movement gets zeroed. Every supply line choked. Trenches get blown wide open. Heavy guns get hunted down. Enemy spotters go blind. Meanwhile, our own rear echelon stays heavily guarded by fast interceptor drones. This is exactly why we care, way beyond a single downed chopper or smoked convoy. It is breaking the spine of old-school military doctrine that relied on massive, overpriced armor and big guns, and dug in static bunkers to hold the line. Today, dirt-cheap tactical systems wipe out those heavy units. Why? Because they strike faster, adapt quicker, and attack in massive swarms. Here's the hard truth. Tomorrow's firefights won't be won by whoever rolls in with the heaviest tanks or the most missiles. Survival comes down to who gets eyes on first, pivots fastest, and wires their drone fleet directly into the assault, and keeps that throttle pinned across the whole grid. Bottom line, you and I aren't just seeing Russian armor burn. This is the face of modern combat evolving right now. Subscribe to Military Force for more.